everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is my June and July wrap up. So I didn't have time to record a June wrap up, which is why I'm merging these both together. June was a super busy month anyway, and I only read 8 books in June, which was my lowest reading month yet in 2023, but things are already picking up. I read 12 books in July, so it's improving. Even though I only read 8 books in June, my average rating was still really high, which I'm really happy about because it meant that I still had a good reading month overall. So without further ado, let's just talk about the books because that's why we're all here. First of all, I started off the month by going on holiday and I wanted to read a bunch of ebooks on the beach. I had been neglecting my ebooks so far this year. So I started off with the 7-Year Slip. This one is about a woman whose auntie has died. She's very close to this auntie and they often went traveling together and spent a lot of time together. And the auntie left the main character the apartment, which I think was in New York City, but I can't remember for sure. So the main character has inherited the apartment and she goes to stay over there and she finds that there is a guy already there who is living in the apartment, and it turns out that he is living 7 years in the past as well, literally. The apartment is some sort of like time travel-y sort of hub. I really enjoyed this one. It was very, very emotional. It's a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. It deals a lot with grief. I really liked the relationship as well. I don't feel like we saw the characters together enough for my liking, but it was still a very good book. So I gave this one 3.5 stars. Really loved the depictions of grief and sort of the whole theme of the main character trying to find herself again and figure out who she actually is and what she wants to do. I then read The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. This one, I wasn't really sure what it was or how it was going to go because I've read 2 books by Beth O'Leary before. I gave one 4 stars, I think. I really enjoyed it, I cried. And then the other one I almost DNF'd and I gave it like 1 or 2 stars. It wasn't great. So this one could have gone either way, but I'm very pleased to say that I loved it. This is about 3 women called Siobhan, Miranda and Jane. I've just realised it's going to be very difficult not to spoil the book for you. Let me just read from the back. It says here that at 8 AM, Siobhan is looking forward to her date with Joseph. She's meant to be having breakfast on Valentine's Day with him, but where is he? At 3 PM, Miranda is hoping that a Valentine's Day lunch with Carter will be the perfect way to celebrate for her new job, but why hasn't he shown up? And then at 6:30 PM, Joseph Carter promised to be Jane's fake boyfriend at a dreaded engagement party tonight, but he's not there. So as you can imagine, it's about the one guy called Joseph Carter who has something to do with all of these women, and he seems to keep standing them up. But that's a very surface level description. I would urge you to carry on reading this or actually decide to pick this up if that has put you off, because that's not what this book is about at all. I don't want to go into any more detail because it was kind of twisty, but it was absolutely fantastic. I do want to do a standalone review for this and maybe reread it as well before I post that review because I really love this book. I gave it 5 stars. It was honestly incredible and I'm so glad I took it on holiday with me. I then read Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins because I'm kind of on a Rachel Hawkins kick at the moment. I gave this one 4 stars. This is about a woman who is dating a guy, has been for a while, and he owns a boat, and 2 rich people decide to pay this guy to sail them out to an uninhabited island just off the coast of Hawaii, and in doing so they'll pay for like the boat's repairs and a bunch of food, and they'll pay the couple handsomely. And then it turns into a thriller. People start sort of disappearing and dying on the island. It's really interesting in that it kept me hooked the entire time. I don't think it's the most surprising plot, but I really like the way that Rachel Hawkins wrote it and I'm very pleased that I read this. There's not loads to say about it. It's not really something that I feel like I can do a standalone review for because it's not really like deep even for a thriller, but I enjoyed it a lot nonetheless. I listened to episode 13 and gave it 3.5 stars. This is a horror book and it's about a bunch of documentary ghost hunter people. They've been working together for a while and they are going to research this haunted, I think it's like a house, but I can't remember if it's sort of an old asylum or something, but let's say a house. They're making a documentary about this haunted house and they've got like all the ghost hunting gear and stuff, and then what most of them don't know is this is kind of their last chance to have a go at this ghost hunting thing, otherwise the network is gonna like cut ties with them and stop paying for them to go and do these things. A few of the characters have other secrets as well. There are quite a few characters involved here. I would strongly recommend listening to the audiobook because it was very atmospheric, very well told. It's got full cast narration and there are sound effects and music and things. It was really, really good. And the first like 3/4 was super creepy. I didn't love the ending of this one, so I only gave this 3.5 stars because I feel like the ending lets it down. But I have to admit, I really struggle with the endings of most horror books that I read, so this is really nothing new. The first 3/4 of this book were brilliant, honestly, and I just feel like it got a little bit kind of long-winded towards the end, but I very much enjoyed it. It was very creepy, and even though I was reading it on a beach, which isn't like the best atmospheric setting for a horror book, I still very much enjoyed my time with it. I then read Will They or Won't They, and I gave it 4 stars. This one is basically a Nina and Ian fanfic. I don't want to go into too much detail about Nina and Ian in real life because I might get sued, but I used to be a fan in the Vampire Diaries fandom, and when Nina Dobrev and Ian Somerhalder broke up, it was a huge thing. So I think this book may have been inspired by that because it's about 2 characters, a man and a woman, used to work together on a TV show and they dated briefly, and then they broke up, and the woman left the TV show but is now coming back for the final season because that's what the fans want and they want to wrap up the show really well. So she has been asked to come back, which is basically what happened with Nina and Ian. So once I got past that part of it and stopped imagining Ian in my head, I did really enjoy this book, and I really loved the couple. Actually, I felt like they had a lot of chemistry. I loved their background, and I loved both of them individually as well. They're both dealing with a lot of stuff that I thought was very good. It's a really good romance book. I also really like books set in Hollywood and about famous people, so this was really fun for that. I got to see them go to like different events together, and dealing with paparazzi and stuff like that. So I'd recommend this one. Then I read Drowning, which is about a plane crash, and I did wait until I got back from holiday to start this one. This is about a plane that malfunctions as it's leaving Hawaii back to mainland USA, and the engines fail and like blow up, and it lands in the ocean. Some of the passengers escape along with the flight attendants, and others decide that it's safer to stay on the plane and seal the doors because there's going to be a fire outside on the water. And they're going to lose oxygen and stuff. So they decide to seal the doors. The plane sinks, and it's kind of like a survival thriller mixed with a race against the clock kind of thriller, because people who are on land have to try and figure out a way to save the people on this plane. This was really, really good. The author actually used to be a flight attendant. I don't think she is anymore. I think she's like retired from that and is a full-time author now. But I think she's very good at describing the setting of an aeroplane, which makes sense because she worked on one for so long. All of the mechanics were there. I can't really speak to whether it's super accurate or not, or whether she took some creative liberties, but it doesn't matter. The main characters in this one are actually a family. So there's the husband who is on the plane with the daughter, and then the wife is on land and trying to save her husband because she has a background in engineering and she fixes things for, I think, the Navy all the time. So she helps and actually tries to conduct this rescue if she was allowed. It was such a good book. I gave it 4 stars. I think I preferred this to Falling, the author's other book, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what she comes out with next, because I don't know how many ways you can talk about plane crashes and thrillers set on airplanes without it getting a bit stale, but I'm looking forward to reading whatever she comes out with next. Anyway, I would really love this if it was a film, I think, because it was, like I said, very atmospheric, and I honestly felt like I was running out of air along with the characters. I might reread it actually. I might buy it for myself and give it a reread because it was very, very good. Then I read Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is her 3rd novel. I've read all of them so far, and this is probably my least favourite so far. I did give it 4 stars again, but it took a while to get going. I think the first 100 pages were a slog, and I really, really struggled with it. So this is about a woman called Elsie who works in STEM, like all of Ali Hazelwood's characters do. She is kind of a fake date for hire. She works for an app and gets paid to go on fake dates with people when they need like a date for an event or a birthday or something. And the love interest is a guy called Jack, who is the brother of one of her customers, and they find that they actually have to work together as well professionally. He is one of the interviewers for a job that she is going for, and she may be potentially joining his department, I guess. It was a good book. It was enjoyable. I always enjoy reading about the STEM stuff, and I do find that even though Ali Hazelwood's characters are all either the short, quirky woman or the big, broad, strong guy, I find that they do have interesting personalities as well, and they've got interesting stuff going on. So I feel like there's always enough stuff to keep me interested. Unfortunately, like I said at the beginning, this was a huge slog. It took me ages to get into, but once I did, I was very much enjoying it. And I do think Ali Hazelwood is getting better with her sex scenes, so that's appreciated as well, because the first one I read, The Love Hypothesis, that was an experience. Finally, in June, I read These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall. She writes a mixture of genres, really, but for YA audiences, she tends to write paranormal horror books. And this is one of those. This is about a main character who goes back to her family's home, which she and her mother had to flee from because her grandfather has died, and the main character has to, I think she inherits it, or she has to sort of take over the running of the house. And then paranormal, mysterious things go on there. I'm gonna be honest, I really struggled with the beginning of this one. I will be talking about this more in a dedicated Kate Alice Marshall video where I talk about all of her books, but I really struggled with the beginning. So the first like 100 pages, I really wasn't sure what was going on. It was all very weird and unsettling, and that's definitely what Kate Alice Marshall was going for, but she probably thought people would catch on a bit faster than I did. But by the time we got to the end, I really cared for the main character, whose name I now cannot remember, and how she was getting involved in the kind of mythology and history surrounding the house, and her relationships with the other characters as well. That was all very interesting to me. I really enjoyed it, and by the end I was really rooting for her. It gave me kind of Haunting of Bly Manor vibes. If you're looking for something like that, definitely go for this, because yeah, the vibes were very, very similar and I very much enjoyed it. So I gave this 3.5 stars just because of the slow beginning, but it may be one that I reread now that I understand more of what's going on. Okay, and now we're on to July. Like I said, I read 12 books, so this video might actually take quite a while. I don't have loads of stuff to say about some of these, so maybe it'll speed up a bit. First of all, I read How to Fake It in Hollywood, which is by the same author of Will They or Won't They, because I really wanted something with a similar vibe. And already I have forgotten what this one is about and how much I liked it. So I gave it, according to my sheet, 3 stars. Definitely wasn't as strong as her second book. So this is about a main character called Grey. Is having trouble finding decent work in Hollywood since her really popular TV show has ended. And her publicist decides that it might be a good idea for her to date a guy called Ethan, who is a bit older than her, I think 10 years older. And he has just gotten divorced from his wife and isn't allowed to co-parent with their children because he has an alcohol addiction, because a few years ago his best friend died, and he has kind of taken himself out of the limelight, but he is like super A-lister, really famous. So the publicist is kind of hoping that this will be his big comeback and will ease him back into Hollywood and movies and stuff, and it will also really help Grey properly establish her career outside of the TV show. So I didn't love this one. I didn't really like the relationship between the characters. I thought Ethan was actually really frustrating and annoying, and I know that he had his reasons to not be like the best person, but I didn't like his relationship with Grey at all. I didn't think they clicked. I still liked the publicity stuff and the Hollywood marketing, press stuff. That was all really interesting to me, but otherwise I didn't like this and I'm gonna unhaul it. I then read The Contest, which I received from the publisher. This is by Karen Hamilton, and I didn't like this. This was honestly a 2-star read. I can't remember much about it. What this is basically about is the main character is working for a company that caters to rich people and to other companies when they want to go on like big group trips. And this one company is going up to summit Mount Kilimanjaro as like a team building sort of exercise, and it's being turned into a contest and a race against other people, and obviously there's a murderer on the mountain. I thought this was cliche and boring. I didn't like any of the characters. I don't really want to talk about it any more than I have to, so yeah, 2 stars, wouldn't recommend. Really disappointing to me. I then read The Life and Medieval Times of Kit Sweetly, which is a YA contemporary book. This one is about a girl called Kit who works for a medieval themed restaurant, and it's kind of a chain. She has a lot of friends there and she does like her job, but she wants to act as a knight, which means that she gets to go into kind of an arena and joust while the patrons are all eating. It's all part of the medieval theme, but the only thing is women aren't allowed to do that. In the first couple of chapters, her brother, who is a knight, he is unable to joust or fight in the opening sort of ceremony, so she stands in his place, and the manager gets really annoyed because that's not allowed when everyone finds out, and Kit is trying to kind of get all her friends together and come up with a way to make the company, the higher-ups, allow women fighting. The thing is, they keep saying that it's not realistic, women didn't fight in the Middle Ages, so why would they let someone in their restaurant do that, except the patrons seem to be all for it. So that's the main kind of theme for this one. I did enjoy it. I only gave it 3 stars because I don't think it's very memorable. I don't think I'm going to remember this in a year's time, but I really enjoyed the fake medieval setting. I liked the relationship. It's kind of best friends to lovers, slow burn as well, which is really enjoyable. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars. If you're really into YA contemporary, then I'd recommend giving this one a go because it's a bit different to other ones that I've read. I don't think I'll remember it next year. And then I actually finished off a series. So I read Shift and Dust by Hugh Howey because I watched the Silo TV show and it really got me in the mood for these books again. So I reread Wall a couple of years ago and Shift was a reread for me this time because I couldn't remember much of what happens. I needed to recap it anyway, so then I read it, recapped it, and then read Dust and finally finished off this trilogy after years and years. I don't know when this one came out, but I did get it as soon as it released. This came out in 2013, so yeah, I'm 10 years behind. I think I ended up enjoying Shift more upon a reread. I gave it 3.5 stars this time, and I gave Dust 3 stars. I don't think it was a very good ending to the series. It wasn't very satisfying. So what this series is about is these people, or society, has now moved to a silo. Underground though, because apparently the air is toxic, and in the first book people are kind of punished or put to death by sending them outside to clean the cameras, and then they quickly die after being out there for a certain amount of time. And then it's a whole kind of dystopia plot where you're trying to figure out if that's correct, if anything anyone is saying is true, ways to maybe leave the silo possibly, if not, how are we going to overthrow the government. So Shift is more of a prequel for the most part, so you find out how the silo was built or how it came to be and the reasons behind it. And I think when I first read it I found it to be a very slow book, but now that I've gotten older I actually appreciated it a lot more. I don't think the mechanics of the series entirely make sense, which is a shame, but it's a very good idea, and I did find this to be a bit faster paced than I expected it to be. And then there's Dust, which, like I said, I gave 3 stars. It wasn't the strongest ending to a series at all. I won't say anything about what happened because it's going to spoil the other 2 books in the series, but I didn't really love what happens with Jules in this one, who is one of the main characters from Wall, because I really love her as a character, and in this one I felt like she kind of didn't really get to do much apart from just cry. Which is fine, like, show emotion, that's good, but also like that's not how I really needed her to react in this last book. I didn't need that to be the only thing that she was doing. It felt very much like men writing women. Yeah, 3 stars for this one and 3.5 for Shift. I'm glad I finally finished this, but I will be unhauling the series because I don't really feel the need to reread now that I know what happens at the end. I also carried on with the series. I read the 3rd and 4th Princess Diaries books. I'm slowly making my way through this. These were rereads for me because I did read them when I was younger. I think I read up to book 6 when I was in secondary school, so I kind of just want to, you know, carry on. I really enjoy these. I gave book 3 4 stars and book 4 3 stars. This could be confusing. You probably know what this is about. It's a kind of middle grade, younger YA series about Mia, who finds out in the first book that she is princess to a small European country, a fake one, not a real life one, and her dad can't have any more children because he recently recovered from cancer and the treatment meant that he couldn't reproduce. So Mia is now the heir to the throne, and she has to have princess lessons with her grandma and get involved in some political stuff, and also deal with the like press releasing all sorts of stuff about her even though she's only 14. And I really enjoy it. It's fun, and I'm reading them on my Kindle at night while I'm falling asleep, and they're only like 250 pages long, so they're really good ones to read if you need some chill time. I then read The Project by Courtney Summers. This one I gave 3 stars. This is a book about a cult. The main character's sister, actually no, let me rewind. The main character's whole family dies apart from her and her older sister, and the older sister, while the main character is in hospital, is kind of like praying for her to survive. She's the only one that she's got left, and then she gets drawn into a cult and is kind of taken away. So then the main character is working for a newspaper or like a journalist or something, and she wants to find her sister for one thing, and she wants to let everyone know about this cult that her sister has joined. I'm not going to go into any more detail other than that because it's a very short book and the plot moves at such a fast pace that I think I might spoil you if I go into more detail. But this is a good book. I felt like the ending was a little bit unsatisfying. I felt like the things that happened to the main character were a bit unsatisfying as well. I thought it might go in that direction, the direction that it did, and I was really hoping that it wouldn't because I didn't want to read about that. So I'm not really happy with the direction that Courtney Summers took this in, and overall it was just really kind of depressing and sad, so I didn't love it. I then read Belladonna. This is a YA historical fantasy about a main character who has some sort of connection with death, like the person, the Grim Reaper. She seems to have some sort of powers. She can see spirits sometimes and also figure out illnesses and, like I said, get in touch with death. I wasn't expecting to like this one as much as I did. I ended up giving this 4 stars because it was very atmospheric and gothic, and it's actually one, I got this from the library. I want to buy it for myself. I think it's out in paperback now, so I could definitely do that. And the sequel is coming out at the end of August, so very soon actually, and I'm really excited for it. It's still not up on NetGalley, which is really annoying because I would have requested it. I got distracted. The main character has been living with various relatives over time. Her mother died when she was a baby, and then other relatives took her in, and then all of them died under various circumstances, and then finally the main character has to move in with, can't remember who they are, the Hawthorne family, who are like distant cousins. The main character, whose name is Signa, learns that the wife in the family, who is her like second cousin or something, she was murdered. Her spirit tells her that she was murdered, and Signa has to try to solve the mystery of who killed her. So it's kind of like a historical murder mystery at the same time. I really loved the plots of this. It was really, really intriguing and exciting. Like I said, I would like to reread it so that I can read it from the beginning and really understand what's going on. This is another one where the first like 40 pages or so were a little bit confusing because you're not really familiar with the world or like Signa's powers or anything, but as the book goes on, more and more gets explained, and I really, really enjoyed it. I liked Signa's relationship with the other characters as well, and her relationship with Death. I wasn't expecting to love it so much, but I did, and I can't wait to see what happens the next book, because this one ended on a cliffhanger as well. So it was just brilliant, and I did give it 4 stars, but maybe I should up that to 4.5 because this is a really, really good book and I would highly recommend it. So after that, I decided to read Fourth Wing. My copy doesn't have a dust jacket because I purchased it when there were Fourth Wing shortages, and I had to get it secondhand for really cheap, to be fair, but it came without the dust jacket, which is fine. I can get one of those later. So if you don't know what this is about, because I know that people have a tendency to just go into it without saying anything, this is about a main character whose name I can't remember, and I don't have the blurb on the back. Just one second. Violet, I should have remembered that. So this is about a main character, Violet, whose mother is the general in this fantasy world's army, and Violet is meant to go and join scribe school, as we're calling it, but now that her dad is dead, her mother has changed her mind and is like, no, Violet, you're going to dragon rider school. To go and bond with dragons, because that's what the rest of the family has done. Violet's brother did the same thing, but he unfortunately died in a war that is ongoing, and Violet's sister Mira also did the same thing, and she's currently alive. So Violet has to join this school, and in order to get to the school, first of all, there's a trial where you have to cross a like slippery bridge, essentially, and a bunch of people fall to their death immediately. But Violet gets through. She makes some enemies along the way. Her childhood best friend is already part of the school. He's a year above her, so he says he'll look out for her. And then her, I guess, like arch enemy, Xaden, is also part of the school. He is a few years older. I think he's in his 4th year or 3rd year, whichever one's the highest. He's in his last year of school, and he is the wing leader, and he takes Violet's squad, I guess you'd call it, under his wing and gets them to join up with him because he has his reasons for wanting to keep an eye on her. In this school, in your first year, if you pass some trials, then you get to bond with a dragon eventually and become a dragon rider, and that's the basic premise. There's loads more I could say about this. I could go on forever. There's a lot happening and a lot of it doesn't actually make sense, but it was a very fast read. It was very fast paced, and it definitely got me back into reading as I was about to fall into a reading slump. So I read Donna, and then I was like, nothing's gonna compare to this. I've not got anything similar on my shelf right now, and then I was like, I'll read Fourth Wing and give it a go. Because I kind of want to read about dragons. And then I did, and it was really good. I gave this 4 stars. It's not, like I said, the best book in the world. The world building is actually kind of shoddy and illogical, but I didn't really care. I thought it was really entertaining, and I tend to rate books on entertainment value rather than how like critically acclaimed they could possibly be. Not that that's something that you shouldn't take into account, but that's just my personal preference, and that's not my personal preference for every single book that I read either. It's dependent on the book. So I really enjoyed this. I liked Violet, I liked Xaden. I didn't like the childhood best friend whose name I've forgotten. I liked Violet's relationships with various people. I think her relationship with her mother would be a good one to explore in the second book, which is coming out in November. But my main thing about this book was I loved Violet's relationship with the dragons. I'm not going to go into any detail there because I feel like if I say some stuff it's going to spoil what happens, but the dragon bonds was definitely my favourite part of this book, and it's the main reason why I picked it up, because I wanted to read about dragons. The war, like I said, didn't really make sense. None of the plot or world building really made sense at all, but that's fine. I don't really understand why the students were dying and why that was okay if the country's at war. Like, surely you want as many soldiers as you can get, unless we're going to find out about that in the second book. But all of that is fine because this was a very entertaining book. I ended up really enjoying it. I'm looking forward to the sequel, but I'm very hesitant because the author is releasing it in November, which seems very soon after the release of this one. And I know that she writes romance books typically, and she's probably used to releasing those really quickly. But I think fantasy books tend to need a bit longer to figure out, especially if you don't entirely have the world building under control in the first book. So I'm a bit nervous how book 2 is going to turn out. I don't really have No, that's not correct. I have high hopes, but I'm nervous, I think is what it is. I'm not really sure how it's going to go, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless, and I would recommend this if you're in the mood for something that's going to get you back into fantasy reading and you don't want to like think too hard about things. This is a really good one for that. And then, because as you can probably see, I'm really in the mood for like YA or easy fantasy, I decided to start rereading Throne of Glass. I've finally done it, guys. These three were all rereads for me, and so will Queen of Shadows be when I get to that soon. And then I'll be finishing off the series with books that I haven't read yet. I'm going to do a whole reading vlog for these books, so I'm not going to go into loads of detail here, and obviously you know what they're about, I assume. If not, I'll tell you in the reading vlog. But just to go over my thoughts quickly, I suppose, we have Throne of Glass, which I obviously read first. I didn't bother rereading The Assassin's Blade because I reread that a few years ago, and I don't really love short stories. I gave this one 3 stars when I first read it. I got it as an ARC from NetGalley way back in the day, and I thought it was just okay. But this time around I gave it 3.5 stars. I did think it was more enjoyable, and I think that's because I already know Selena and who she is as a character and her personality and all of that, and I was finding myself really understanding the world building in this one, having read the other books. I think this is a much stronger book upon a reread because the world building makes a lot more sense, and all of the little clues and hints that Sarah J Maas puts in here become relevant later on. And this time I knew what she was talking about, whereas before it was just nonsensical. So I've also started tabbing these books this time around because why not? I still hate Kale, although he wasn't too annoying in this book. Dorian I still love. I thought I would be put off by him, but I'm really not. But overall, the main character is Selena, and I love her the most. Crown of Midnight, I think, is actually the weakest book out of these 3, and probably the weakest in the series, which I will find out if I carry on. When I carry on, it might be Tower of Dawn because of Kale. But yeah, this wasn't great. I think when I first read it, I gave it 3.5 stars. Now it'll be more of a 3. It felt very much like a thriller book. I've got cat hair all over this. It felt very much like a filler book. I thought it was just kind of a bridge between Throne of Glass, the start of the series, and Air of Fire, where everything kicks off. I still love Selena, of course. She goes through some stuff in this one, as she does in all of them. She is such a good character. I honestly love reading about her. Kale becomes insufferable in this one, whereas he was okay in Throne of Glass. I just hate him in this one, and I was reading this whole book just waiting to get to the final page where he kind of just loses his shit because of something that goes on. The final line of this book is Kale sank to his knees, and I was just waiting for that to happen because I wanted to troll him basically, because I'm just not a fan. I really like Dorian in this one as well, and the other characters that get introduced are also all very interesting, and there's a mystery as well in this one, as there is in the first one. Actually, there's like a murder mystery going on, and in this one it's more of like I guess it's still a murder mystery, but it's building upon the whole mystery. This one is quite emotional as well, but because I already knew what was going to happen, I didn't get too invested in that part of the storyline, because I just didn't want to get my heart broken. And then I read Air of Fire, which is the book that back in the day got me really into this series. I was actually going to just not carry on reading it, and then because I didn't love the first 2 books, as you can see I still don't, but my friend told me that she is convinced that Air of Fire will get better, and she read this first, and then I picked it up straight after because it did sound very good, especially after the ending of Crown of Midnight. I feel like this one had a lot more potential. I ended up giving this one 4 stars upon a reread, which I think is what I gave it before, or I might have given it 4.5 before, but it's definitely a 4-star read now. It dragged a lot, and this is the book where some of the characters start to get split up and more point of views get introduced. Dorian is kind of doing nothing throughout this whole book, which is really disappointing given the size of it. Oh yeah, those are my tabs as well. I'll talk about those in a second. Kale carries on just being boring. But we do have 2 new characters, one called Manon, who people have probably heard about, and one called Adian, and of course you get Rowan in this book as well. I loved all of the new characters. I couldn't remember that Rowan got introduced like in the first chapter of this book. I thought it was a slower burn than that. I didn't love his relationship at the beginning with Selena, but over time they do form a bit of a bond, I suppose, and it's a lot more interesting to read about. I did think that the beginning, like I said, was a bit of a slog because we're jumping back and forth between Selena, Manon, and what's going on with Dorian and Kale, and I just didn't care. I wanted to read more about Selena because she's my favourite. But then towards the end, you can see here where I've got more tabs, that's when Selena's stuff all starts happening and it gets really emotional, and I cried. It was really good. So yeah, I reread these, and I'm looking forward to rereading Queen of Shadows soon. Like I said, I'm going to do a vlog on my experience with these books and this whole series. I'm probably going to talk about spoilers as well if I feel like it, so stay tuned for that. Let me know if you'd like to watch it. Okay, and that was my June and July wrap up. I've been talking for ages, I'm losing my voice. But hopefully you got some good recommendations out of this. If you're going to read any of these, I would recommend reading The No Show or Belladonna, depending on your taste, romance or fantasy. Both are really, really good, and I highly recommend them. If you would like me to do individual reviews for any of these as videos, then let me know in the comments below. Just tell me and I will do that. Let me know what you read in the past couple of months and what your favourite books were from that time period. I would love to know, and I want more recommendations from you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you all in the next video. Bye!